The security manager's eyes narrowed as he looked at the petite woman across from his desk. "Ma'am, I appreciate you applying, but this position requires someone who can handle physical confrontations. Perhaps you'd be better suited for our receptionist opening." Sarah Chen smiled politely, her hands folded in her lap, saying nothing about the calluses from years of rappelling, the scars hidden beneath her blazer, or the muscle memory that could disarm a man twice her size in under 3 seconds. What he didn't know was that rejecting her application would be the biggest mistake of his career, and 6 armed intruders were about to prove it in the most dramatic way possible. Sarah Chen adjusted her blazer one final time before entering the gleaming corporate headquarters of Meridian Industries. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers, casting long shadows across the marble lobby where she'd waited for this interview for 3 weeks. At 5'4" and barely 125 pounds, she knew exactly what the security manager would see when she walked through his door, and it wasn't what he was looking for. "Ms. Chen?" The receptionist's voice carried across the pristine waiting area. "Mr. Davidson will see you now." Sarah's military-trained posture never wavered as she walked down the hallway lined with corporate achievements and safety awards. Each step was deliberate, controlled, a habit ingrained through 8 years of special operations missions in places most people couldn't pronounce. The security manager's office was exactly what she expected. Certificates covering every wall, photos of him with various law enforcement officials, and a desk positioned to establish immediate dominance over visitors. Robert Davidson was a large man in his 50s, his security uniform stretched tight across a frame that had seen better days. His handshake was firm, testing, the kind meant to intimidate. "So, Ms. Chen," he began, settling into his leather chair while she remained standing until invited to sit. "I've reviewed your application for our senior security position. Your resume shows some interesting experience, but I have to be honest with you." He leaned back, his tone already dismissive. "This job requires someone who can handle physical confrontations, someone who can command respect just by walking into a room. Our clients expect a certain presence." Sarah's expression remained neutral, though her fingers unconsciously traced the edge of her portfolio. Inside were commendations from operations in Afghanistan, certifications in hand-to-hand combat, and recommendation letters from colonels who'd trusted her with missions that would never appear in any public record. She could have filled this man's office with evidence of her capabilities, but something told her it wouldn't matter. "I understand your concerns, Mr. Davidson," Sarah replied, her voice steady and professional. "However, I believe effective security comes from training, awareness, and tactical thinking, rather than intimidation." She opened her portfolio, revealing carefully selected portions of her background: corporate security certifications, defensive tactics training, crisis management credentials. What she didn't show were the classified documents, the Purple Heart, or the photos of her leading a team of Green Berets through hostile territory. Davidson barely glanced at the papers. "Look, I'm sure you're very qualified for other positions, but our security team deals with serious threats. Industrial espionage, corporate sabotage, sometimes violent confrontations. We need someone who can handle a 200-pound intruder, not someone who might become a liability in a crisis situation." The words stung, not because they were personal, but because they represented everything wrong with assumptions based on appearance. Sarah had spent years proving herself in an environment where failure meant death, where her teammates' lives depended on her ability to neutralize threats efficiently and silently. She'd earned her place among America's most elite warriors, not through size or intimidation, but through skill, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to mission success. "I appreciate your honesty," Sarah said, closing her portfolio with the same precision she'd once used to close mission files. "However, I'd still like to be considered for any position within your security department. I'm willing to start at entry level to prove my capabilities." Davidson's laugh was condescending. "Entry-level security here starts at minimum wage, night shifts, mostly monitoring empty buildings. It's hardly suitable for someone with your educational background." He gestured at her business attire, clearly assuming she came from a privileged background rather than the hard-scrabble military bases and forward operating posts that had been her home for nearly a decade. "That would be acceptable," Sarah replied without hesitation, surprising him. "When can I start?" The question hung in the air as Davidson processed her unexpected response. He'd expected her to leave gracefully, perhaps apply for a receptionist position or something more traditionally feminine. Instead, she sat across from him with the quiet confidence of someone who'd faced far worse than corporate rejection. "Well, I suppose we could use another night security guard," he stammered, reaching for paperwork he clearly hadn't expected to need. "It's mostly walking empty floors, checking doors, monitoring cameras, 12-hour shifts, minimum wage, no benefits for the first 90 days. Are you sure you're interested in something so basic?" Sarah signed the employment forms with the same steady hand that had once signed mission reports in Baghdad and Kandahar. Completely sure. What Davidson couldn't know was that she'd spent months researching Meridian Industries, not for employment, but because intelligence suggested the company might be targeted by industrial espionage rings. Taking this position wasn't about the money or career advancement. It was about being in position when the threat materialized. "You start Monday night, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., Davidson said, handing her a temporary badge and a pamphlet about company policies. "Report to the main security desk. Someone will show you the rounds." His tone made it clear he expected her to quit within a week, unable to handle the isolation and monotony of night security work. As Sarah left his office, she caught her reflection in the lobby's polished marble. The businesswoman in the blazer would disappear come Monday night, replaced by someone far more dangerous than Robert Davidson could ever imagine. 6 weeks later, when armed intruders would breach Meridian's supposedly impenetrable security, they would discover the true cost of underestimating Sarah Chen. But for now, she simply walked to her car, already planning how to turn this rejection into the most valuable position she'd ever held. 3 weeks into her night shift routine, Sarah had memorized every corner, every blind spot, every potential entry point of the Meridian Industries complex. While her supervisor believed she was simply checking doors and watching monitors, she was actually conducting detailed reconnaissance, identifying weaknesses that a trained operative would exploit. Her military mind never stopped analyzing, cataloging, preparing for scenarios that civilian security never considered. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in November. Sarah was in the third-floor break room, reviewing camera feeds on her tablet when the perimeter alarms began their silent notification, a subtle vibration on her security device that most guards would attribute to a malfunction. But Sarah's trained eye caught what others missed. 6 heat signatures approaching the building's east entrance, moving with tactical precision that screamed military training. She switched her radio to emergency frequency, ready to call for backup, when she heard the chatter from the main security office. "Probably another false alarm," the senior guard mumbled to his partner. "System's been glitchy all week. I'll reset it from here." Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized they were dismissing the most serious threat the building had ever faced. Through her tablet, she watched 6 figures dressed in black tactical gear systematically disable external cameras with the efficiency of a special operations team. Her training kicked in automatically. First rule of engagement: assess the threat level and available resources. 6 armed intruders, military trained, approaching through multiple entry points. Friendly forces, 2 civilian guards in the main lobby, both focused on their coffee and croats. Sword puzzles, completely unaware of the approaching danger. Police response time: minimum 12 minutes to this industrial district. By then, whatever these intruders wanted would be long gone, and people would likely be dead. Sarah activated her phone's camera, documenting the intruder's approach while simultaneously accessing the building's security systems through protocols she wasn't supposed to know. Her fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency, isolating camera feeds, mapping the intruder's most likely routes, and identifying choke points where a single operator could control multiple approaches. The first intruder reached the east entrance at 2:52 a.m., bypassing the electronic locks with equipment that suggested serious funding and planning. Sarah watched from her position 3 floors above as they moved through the lower level with night vision goggles and suppressed weapons. Their target was clearly the research and development wing, where Meridian's most sensitive defense contracts were housed. Sarah's mind shifted into combat mode, the transformation as natural as breathing. The friendly night security guard disappeared, replaced by Staff Sergeant Chen, decorated veteran of operations in 3 combat zones. She moved through the building like a ghost, using maintenance corridors and service elevators that didn't appear on standard floor plans. Her soft-soled shoes made no sound on the polished floors as she positioned herself between the intruders and their objective. The first takedown happened in the second-floor stairwell. The point man never saw her coming. A silent approach from above, a precise application of pressure to his carotid artery, and he was unconscious in 4 seconds. Sarah secured his weapon and communication device, then zip-tied his hands with restraints she'd carried in her security belt since day one. 1 down, 5 to go. Intruder number 2 was neutralized in the research corridor, caught off guard by Sarah's reflection in a glass partition. Her military training had taught her to use every surface as a tactical advantage. The man was reaching for his radio when Sarah's arm locked around his throat from behind. No shots fired, no alarms triggered, just the soft sound of another body hitting the floor. The third and fourth intruders were moving as a team, which presented both opportunity and challenge. Sarah used the building's own security features against them, triggering a fire door that separated them by mere seconds. In that brief window, she dropped from a ceiling access panel directly onto the trailing operator. Her weight and momentum drove him to the ground while her hand clamped over his mouth, preventing any warning to his partner just 20 feet away. By 3:15 a.m., 4 intruders were neutralized and secured in various locations throughout the building. Sarah had done what an entire security team couldn't: protect Meridian Industries from a coordinated assault without firing a single shot or triggering a single alarm. But the remaining 2 operators were the most dangerous, having realized their communications had gone silent and their team was compromised. The leader made his mistake in the executive suite, where he'd finally reached the secured servers containing Meridian's defense contracts. Sarah had anticipated this, using her knowledge of the building's layout to arrive first. When he entered the server room, she was waiting in the shadows above the doorframe, suspended between ceiling supports like a spider preparing to strike. The final confrontation lasted less than 30 seconds. Years of special operations training had taught Sarah that the most dangerous opponents required the most decisive action. As the intruder leader swept the room with his weapon, Sarah dropped silently behind him, her arm locking around his throat while her other hand secured his weapon. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the small woman he'd never noticed, moving with the lethal efficiency of America's finest warriors. The 6th intruder never made it past the lobby. Sarah had used the building's communication system to guide him directly into a maintenance area where she waited with the patience of a sniper. By 3:45 a.m., all 6 intruders were secured, their equipment confiscated, and their mission completely neutralized. When the morning shift arrived at 7 a.m., they found Robert Davidson staring at security footage that showed his minimum-wage night guard single-handedly defeating a coordinated assault by professional operatives. Sarah stood in his office, still wearing her simple security uniform, as police and federal agents processed the scene she'd created. "Ms. Chen," Davidson stammered, his face pale with shock and realization. How did you—" Sarah's smile was the same polite expression she'd worn during her job interview. "Effective security comes from training, awareness, and tactical thinking, Mr. Davidson, just like I mentioned in our first meeting." She placed her security badge on his desk, along with documentation of the night's events and a formal application for the senior security position that had opened when her supervisor quit that morning. Sarah Chen's story reminds us that heroism often comes in unexpected packages, and that true strength isn't measured by size or appearance, but by character, training, and the willingness to stand between innocent people and danger. Her 8 years of military service had prepared her for moments exactly like this, when training, courage, and tactical thinking meant the difference between security and catastrophe. Today, Sarah leads Meridian Industries' entire security division, implementing protocols that have become the industry standard for corporate protection. Her team includes veterans from all branches of service, men and women who understand that defending others requires more than intimidation. It requires the heart of a warrior and the mind of a strategist. The 6 intruders she neutralized that night were part of an international espionage ring that had successfully breached 17 other corporations. Sarah's actions not only saved Meridian Industries millions in stolen technology, but also protected defense contracts that safeguard our national security. If this story of hidden heroism and military excellence inspired you, please subscribe to honor the countless veterans who continue serving our communities in ways we might never see. Share this video to remind others that heroes walk among us every day, often unrecognized until the moment when their true calling demands they step forward. Hit that notification bell to join us in celebrating the men and women who've earned the right to be called America's finest. Whether you're wearing uniforms or security badges, leading battalions or protecting corporate hallways, remember, freedom isn't free, and sometimes its guardians are the quiet professionals we never notice until we need them most. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all who've served.